Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me on our newest town hall. Today, we're going to be talking about back to school during the COVID pandemic and how we can do that safely, or if we can do that safely. My guest today is Amy Lightner. She is a member, as you can see, of PSEA, which is the largest teachers union in Pennsylvania. She's a teacher at Central Dauphin School District, and she is the chair of the Council on Instruction and Professional Development. Thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So just, can you give us a little background on yourself, how long you've been involved in education with PSEA, the council, what all you do?
So I've been a teacher in Central Dauphin School District my entire career, 22 years. This will be my 22nd year. So what a way to start 22. I've taught second and third grade, and I'm currently a data and instruction specialist. So I work with students who are struggling academically or behaviorally. I'm in Paxtang Elementary and Lawton Elementary. I love what I do, love connecting with the kids, and I can't wait to get back there and see them this fall, however it may be. It's scary time to be going back, but, I want to see them, just praying that we all have the safety precautions in place that we need. As far as PSEA, I have been a member since I began, so I'm a 22-year member, and I've already joined PSEA retired so that I'll stay a lifelong member. I just started getting actively involved my second year when Central Dauphin went on strike over a contract, and so I felt like I really needed to be involved to understand what was going on, and from there I became a building rep. I was the president of my local Central Dauphin Education Association for, I believe, 3 or 4 years, stepped down from that position, but have stayed active in the state level with the Council for Instruction and Professional Development, and we help provide professional development for teachers across the state, doing all kinds of things. We do House of Delegates twice a year, we do Gettysburg Leadership, and since the spring, we have been doing a ton of remote learning opportunities for our members. Our Ed Services staff has stepped up and met the needs of our members with the remote learning. So it's been amazing, and I look forward to what we can do now, moving on with that.
Well, I do want to thank you for all of that, but for being a teacher. I say all the time, teachers are overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated, but you show up every single day, year after year, and do it anyway. So thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Everybody says that schools closed in the spring. The building closed. Yeah. School went on. It wasn't what, we're used to it being, but school went on for us. We were still reaching out to our kids, trying to make contact with those kids that we weren't able to, whether it was text messages, emails, posts on our Google Classroom. We were trying to make those connections and doing what we could. So school wasn't truly closed. It was just in a different format than we were used to.
And you did that all very impressively in a short amount of time. It wasn't like, over the Christmas break, you were like, gee, what if we had a pandemic? How could we make it work? No, it was like, holy cow, we have a pandemic. 2 weeks later, schools are closed. Now what are we going to do? The fact that that was figured out so quickly it's mind-bending. It's so impressive. May not have been perfect, but boy, it worked. It was great.
It did, and it was tough on everyone. I personally have a 3-year-old, so I was at home trying to teach with my 3-year-old. Yeah. So we were all kind of turned upside down. Thankful for neighbors and family that were able to help me out, but for a little while, we weren't doing anything. We were at home. It was her and I. My husband's an essential, and he was going to work, but I did what I could for my students during that time also. Yeah. Central Dauphin found out on a Friday. that it was potentially happening. And we were on that Friday trying to figure out what we were doing. Some teachers had already left for the day at that point because it was 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon. You know, we at elementary fortunately had conferences. So we, in those last hour and a half of our day, we flipped and went, okay, what can we do? What can we put up? What can we prepare so students have something to do? And I think every district did the best that they could with what they had available. And some districts in our state don't have the technology, or they know that their community doesn't have the technology to turn to remote learning. So I have one friend who was riding on the bus, delivering packets to students throughout the pandemic closure.
Wow.
So we all just turned and did what we needed to do in order to serve our students and our community.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's a lot of things that people are worried about now, you know, coming from that experience in the spring. And now they're saying, you know, COVID is on the uptick again. I mean, I watch the numbers every day, and Dauphin County is climbing and climbing and climbing, double-digit new cases every day. It's worrisome. And then you see on the news, you know, schools in Georgia with the packed hallways, and college kids with their parties. And, you know, I think a lot of people are just wondering, is it even possible to do this safely? You know, what plans are in place? I know you can just talk about Central Dauphin, or maybe as a PSEA member, you know, kind of statewide, what safety plans are in place, and you know, what's it going to look like when they go back to school? I think that's next week for a lot of kids.
It's next week for us. Many districts in the southern region have started to delay the start of school to give some of their educators time to prepare, a little bit more time. Mm-hmm. Central Dauphin has not chosen to do that. The association has asked numerous times, but they've said, we really want to get kids back face to face and try and get that time in so we can teach them the technology, right. So that if we have to go remote, you know, they're better prepared. Yeah. And some of that's my interpretation of that.
Sure.
But the thing that everybody needs to realize is every school district can write their own health and safety plan. Mm-hmm. And they have to submit it, but it's not like they have to meet a certain criteria. There's not a checklist that you have to have certain things. There are recommendations. You know, just last week it changed that the students have to wear their masks all day. So things are changing currently, and those health and safety plans have to be changed. But even the distancing piece is not consistent. You know, some districts are saying 3 feet, some are saying it has to be 6. Mm-hmm. And for some classrooms, the reality is it's not big enough. You don't have space enough to do 6 feet. And that's part of why Central Dauphin went to the hybrid model. So they have students coming Monday, Tuesday, virtually Friday, well, virtually Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then other students are virtual Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and then in face on Tuesday, Thursday, because a lot of the elementary classrooms just physically didn't have the space to do the social distancing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the recommendations are to wash your hands regularly, and I'm an elementary teacher, so we're going to have to be teaching that. What is the proper protocol for washing your hands, and how do you do it safely? Why are we doing those things? Yeah. That is a huge component of the elementary return to instruction plan, is teaching the students and helping them understand why these things are so important for us. We also have to, at elementary, we're talking about recess. What is safe for them to be able to do? You know, every grade level has to have a set of equipment, the balls, the jump ropes, or things that they play with out there. And one of the questions that came up in our faculty meetings yesterday, is it safe for them to be on the equipment, the slides, the swings? Do we have the capacity to clean it in between? So even as we're preparing and we have these plans, more and more questions are coming up. Yeah. And that's scary.
Yes.
Because we don't know.
Yeah. do you think that the current measures that are in place, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you think they're enough to keep everyone safe, or do you wish there was more time, between now and the start to kind of really flush out those things? Because I can get what you're saying. It's like you don't even think about this situation until you're in it, and then you're like, oh no, is this safe? Are we good here?
And again, my personal opinion is I wish we could wait, but I also realize the reality is if we wait, are we going to be able, is it going to change anything?
Right.
Or are the numbers going to go up and we're going to have to switch gears again? I don't think there's any one right answer. And I think we need to have grace and patience with everyone, especially those administrators making these decisions. I wouldn't want to be one of them making the decisions. Yep. You look at it one day and it looks like, oh, this is a great plan. And the next day, it may not look as great. Mm-hmm. The other thing is grace and patience with the teachers as they're learning new things. And we're going to have that with our parents because our schedule may not match theirs, and the reality is we've all got to do what we have to do to make this work and understand and be patient. So.
Yeah, because I think all kids learn differently, I would assume, because all adults learn differently. Some are better I know I'm better if someone shows me something versus having to sit down and read a manual. Maybe that's just because I would rather have my husband read the manual.
I agree.
But I think I learn better, when somebody shows me. So, you're trying to help all those kids who learn differently. It's if somebody's going to thrive more in person learning, then it's not the best thing for them to be distance learning, but still you have to keep them safe. And keeping everybody safe has been an evolving method. I get frustrated with the people who say, oh, now we have to wear masks. We didn't have to wear masks, 6 months ago. But we're constantly learning more and more about COVID and about the difficulties with it and the challenges. So I don't know how you do it, just kind of keeping up. I mean, do you think that the way it's structured now is enough for all students to thrive, to be able to thrive in the learning environment with, some in person and some distance?
I think any scenario right now is not going to meet all of their needs. Just like when we're in the classroom, sometimes you have to turn on the dime in order to help Billy or Bobby or Susie to do their best because you figure out what works for them. So we're constantly, even in the classroom, switching what we do. And I think we need to think about that as we go to these models. If a student really learns better by, being actively engaged, then how do we do that through technology? Right. That is one thing I'll say. I personally feel Central Dauphin did a good job with our professional development over the summer. No, it wasn't enough time to process it and be able to apply it and figure it all out. But they gave us opportunity to do courses that would really help prepare us for remote learning. And I hope other school districts followed suit with that because we weren't prepared when we went out in March, and we taught ourselves and we taught each other through a Zoom, trying to figure it all out. So I hope that educators will be looking for best practices that we can use during remote learning and do the best we can during that face-to-face, because even face-to-face is not really face-to-face. We're all going to have our masks on, and there's so much in education that we're looking at their facial expressions to see, do they understand, and they look at us to see our compassion and our understanding. So that's another thing we're going to have to adjust to, and I'm an elementary teacher. I love the hugs and, the pats on the back. Another thing that we've got to figure out a new way to do that.
Yeah. I think that's a thing that a lot of people are struggling with. in general is just, the lack of touching. And, I was listening to the radio this morning, and they have switched the radio show to Zoom. Everybody's in different areas. And one of the guys' kids had gone away to college, and he came back today to kind of get some more of his stuff. And when he walked in, he hugged his dad just out of like, it's what they're used to. I haven't seen you. And the host of the show was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, and the kid was like, oh no. So yeah, it's like, it's human nature to do those types of things. And I don't think, or maybe I'm wrong, but do the kids even understand when they're that young, why they can't hug you? Or
no, I don't think they do. I can speak for my 3-year-old. She doesn't understand why she can't just run up and give everybody hugs, and why we wear masks. I mean, we talk a lot about we're doing it to keep ourselves safe and others safe, but do they truly know what that means? Yeah. And that's going to be our job those first few days. A lot of conversation. I had an Amazon wish list this year, and I put some of those books on my list about social distancing. And one of the books is Lucy Wears a Mask, so that we can help kids understand. One of the fabulous teachers at one of my buildings, she did a little video for back to school night that showed herself with her mask, her shield. And what a great idea, so that kids have clear expectations of what they're going to see, so they're not scared.
Yeah, because that's when you said shield, that was the first thing that popped into my head. Oh my gosh, that might be scary for some of the little kids, to see people like that, because being at home, I'm sure everybody's normal and everybody's hugging each other, but yeah, to go out into the world and see that all of a sudden.
Yeah, I agree.
And the other problem is parents, working parents, and what do they do? With the education kind of being not paused, but not going back to normal, but yet you have all the businesses and employers working on going back to normal, where everybody's easing away from teleworking. What do the parents do? Some parents are stuck deciding between a job and benefits and being home with their kids. I mean, there's a statistic that says 96% of fathers work a full-time job and 78% of mothers work a full-time job. That's a huge section of our population who is having to make that decision. There's some things they can do. There's the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, which allows parents, if kids' school is not fully 100% back, they can apply for sick time. And I'll put the link to that in the comments on the Facebook page for that. But that's still limited. It doesn't apply to every employer. It doesn't apply to every employee. And I've heard that some parents are doing the education pods, which is interesting. They're hiring teachers or educators to come in, and they kind of pull the kids together, and families take turns hosting the school for that day. But again, that's great, but only if you can afford it. So what have you heard that parents are doing to kind of, help that ease that process for them?
I know one of the daycares in the Central Dauphin School District has actually figured out how many students they can hold who would normally be before and after school care, and how many they can keep in their building, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday. So that's one option, but again, that's going to be a cost that parents weren't anticipating because they're paying for full days of care. So some folks who are going with the total virtual are sending their kids to daycare every day, Monday through Friday. And then there's the concern, do the daycares have the Wi-Fi for students to be able to get on? Do they have the staffing to supervise? So those are a couple options, but I've also heard of parents in neighborhoods who are saying, well, I work part-time, I can take X, Y, and Z days. If you could do these days, we could share the responsibility so that students are able to do the virtual or the hybrid, whichever choice they're making. And so some of that shared responsibility, you know, how it used to be growing up that everybody just went to everybody's house in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I think some of that's coming back with how they're able to figure out these schedules. Or if a parent works from home, I'm seeing a lot of people set up desks in their living room, and each child has a desk and all their supplies so that they'll be able to do their work on the virtual days.
Yeah.
So we're really having to think outside the box as parents on how are we going to do that.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, are there resources for parents to find maybe retired teachers who want to work? I know you had mentioned that earlier. If a parent is searching, like, can they find those people who are available?
I wouldn't say there's one real good resource, but I know in Central Dauphin, they have a Facebook page that it's the Families of Central Dauphin School District, and people have been reaching out through that. Facebook, I would say, is probably a great resource to say, I'm in need of help. Is there anybody out there who can help me? There are teachers who are retired who are willing to help do some of those supports. There are teachers who are just currently not working that are offering to say, you know, I can't really provide direct instruction, but I can assist them with the technology to do the remote learning that they need to do. You know, especially for parents who are working. And, you know, sometimes those kids just learn better having somebody else say, hey, this is what you need to do, rather than their parent. So it's not a fight.
Yeah, yeah, I laugh because, yeah, absolutely. I can remember that just myself growing up. It's like, you can't do this. Oh, yes, I can. And then the neighbor says, you can't do that. And I'm like, oh, really? Really? It's human nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it used to always be, and there's that quote, you know, it takes a village to raise a kid. And, you know, we've gotten away from that. I think our society has become more siloed. People are more keep to themselves, you know, don't wander out into the neighborhood and get to know their neighbors. Maybe that's the silver lining here, you know, that we can get back to that where we're all working together for the common good.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So some of the things you've been seeing on TV in some other states, I haven't seen it here in PA, is that teachers are thinking about striking because, you know, they don't feel that the schools have a good enough plan in place, or they're just worried, you know, about, is it safe? You know, yeah, we're pushing the back to school, but are we doing that too quickly? And so have you heard anything about teachers having those types of concerns across Pennsylvania, or, you know, thoughts on striking at all?
I personally have not heard anything about striking. I know that a lot of locals are saying, get out to your school board meetings, please go and speak, please share your concerns. And a lot of that is over not considering everyone's safety in the plan, not considering the facts. That's one thing that I personally, and I think PSEA feels Pennsylvania has followed the data. So if the data showed there were spikes, then we put things in place. And we have pretty good guidelines. And being the data person at school, that's what I'm looking at. How many cases are there? How many beds are being filled? So locals are doing things like trying to talk to their school boards. Conestoga Valley EA is doing some marching outside the school board to share their concerns, that they just want a safe plan, and make sure you're considering everything. You know, are we following the guidelines set out? I mean, we really wish we could have more stringent guidelines or more direct guidelines from PDE. But again, I think they're doing the best they can because they have, a huge state and things are different all across the state.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that, masks are being worn, the 6 feet, it shouldn't be an option of the best you can do. Our plan should be saying it's 6 feet because that's what the data is showing helps keep us safe. We want to make sure that there's guidelines about who's going where and how much we're transitioning it within the buildings. At the elementary level, they are staying in their home rooms. Specials teachers like art, music, PE, library are going to come to them. PE will be outside as much as possible. But we want to make sure that those plans are being safe for everybody involved. And it's not just, oh, we need to get kids back to school.
Right.
And from my perspective, from across the United States also, I think some places have had this huge push, just put the kids back in school, we'll figure it all out. And when we're dealing with people's health and safety, that's just not the best way to go.
Yeah, and a lot of the argument is that kids don't get coronavirus, which of course we know is not true. They may not get it on the level that we do, but they can still be carriers and take it either from home to school and infect the teachers or the staff. They can get it from school and bring it home and infect their families. So it's not as easy, like you said, to just say this one thing. You have to consider everybody in the plan. It's great if the kids are safe, but you've got to keep the teachers and the staff safe and the administration safe. It is not just a one thing issue. It's like you said, can you keep the equipment clean, the playground equipment clean? Like, who would even think of that? It's so much to think about. I just don't know how they're doing it.
The safety plans are very long and very detailed, and it's fabulous work that they're doing. But again, until you look at every aspect, there's always something that needs to be addressed, and a question comes up. And my district has been fabulous. We have a Google document with a question and answer. So anytime you think of a question, you put it on there, and someone is either searching for the answer or is putting an answer up there. So that's great. But some of that hasn't necessarily been as communicated with families, at least from what I'm hearing from families. They feel like they don't know all those answers. So that's a place where we definitely need to look at, how do we better communicate with each other all around so that we all know those answers to the questions?
And that's what as you were saying that, I was wondering, is that just for staff to communicate with the board their questions? So parents don't have that ability unless they show up at a school board meeting. But do they have access to the safety plans? Is that something parents can get hold of?
The safety plan's on our website, so it's available, and parents can always email principals. That's the recommendation. Email your principal, email your school board director if you have questions, email the superintendent, if there's questions, but realize they're also overwhelmed with a lot going on, so it might take some time to get back to them. But it's important for parents to feel like they have a voice and they can ask questions, and they should. It's their child, it's their child's education. Definitely ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure they get involved. I used to work in local government, and I've been a long time government watchdog. And it always amazed me when I attend meetings, whether it be school board meetings or township meetings or committee meetings up at the state capitol. They're all open to the public, but no public comes. And this is where decisions are being made every day that affect you personally, especially on the local level. And you have got to get involved, because yes, you can change something after the fact. You can get mad about a policy that's been put in place. You can get a bunch of people together, and there's a chance you can change it. but wouldn't it be better to be involved all along the process and be able to stop it before it starts? That's when it's the easiest.
Oh, yes. That's part of why I got so involved, because I just said, I need to be on the forefront and understand. And I want to have a voice in some of the decisions that are being made.
Yeah. And one of the things we pushed as I was with Rock the Capital, or am with Rock the Capital, we pushed all townships and school boards and up in Harrisburg to live stream your meetings. And we would always get pushback. We don't have the capability. Nobody, if they want to see the meeting, they can come here. But that's not so easy, and a lot of times they'd be recorded, but they'd be put on the website a month later and they'd be edited, That's not good enough. And now everyone has figured out how to live stream their meetings. So I'm asking people, please don't let up on your municipality, on your school board. They really need to continue to live stream their meetings to make it easier for everybody to be involved. Not everybody can get there at 7 o'clock at night and attend a 2-hour meeting, but they can sure have it playing at their kitchen table while the kids are doing their homework, or so it's so important to be involved. But even now, it's more important to get involved.
Oh, definitely. And I know, I think it was beginning of August, we had, I believe, 900 people on the one Monday night board meeting. And I just thought, that's awesome. They didn't stay for the whole meeting, but they were there. They were engaged in parts of the meeting, listening and hearing what's going on. And that's really important, because you can see things in a different light when you see face, on your computer, or you're hearing live stream what's going on at your school board meetings.
Yeah, because I'm just going to make a general statement here. So, all of you board members, don't shoot the messenger. It's a general statement. But a lot of things are done when there's nobody around. And there are times when that's by design, okay? And so you've got to always be there. You may look at the agenda and say, oh, there's nothing here that interests me. You never know what's going to come up in that meeting. So I just highly encourage everyone to get involved. And, I'm sure there's a lot of groups school-wise where parents can get involved face-to-face. And how do they do that? How would they get involved? Is there?
Just about every school has a PTO or a PTA or some sort of a council that they can get involved in. And I think that's really important, because those committees and groups, they support a school so well. A lot of schools now have Facebook pages or Instagram pages, so you can be involved in seeing what's going on. But you have a voice as a parent through those groups and organizations too, to say, I have a question. Why is this happening? Or can you explain how this works? So that's another resource for parents. Not to mention, they support everybody in the school and help us out greatly. I've always had great PTOs who, they reimburse us some of our expenses throughout the year. They will help us buy supplies for the classroom. They do great teacher appreciation weeks, to show us how much we're appreciated. And so they're fabulous organizations. And they also have a connection at the state level with a statewide PTA or PTO, whichever it would be. So lots of resources there.
Yeah, and please don't feel dumb asking a question, because I can guarantee you, whatever question you have, there's a dozen more parents that have the same question, who are all sitting around thinking, I'm the only one who's thinking this. Step up.
No, and if we don't hear the question, we don't know the questions out there, but it may be a simple answer, or it may be something that we hadn't even thought of.
Yeah.
At every level.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. and supporting the teachers. I said earlier, I'll say it again, underpaid, overworked, underappreciated, and you show up every day to do it anyway. And people ask me why I'm so passionate about education when I don't have kids. And the easy answer and the obvious answer to me is that everybody's kids are my future. And I think that's a Whitney Houston song just popped into my head. But it's true, we're all going to age out of the workforce. And those children, whether they live in Philly or Erie or right here in Central PA, are going to run our world. They're going to run our businesses. They're going to come to our house to fix things. They're going to be in government. And we want them to have the best education possible because we want the best future ourselves possible. And that's only going to happen if our children are thriving in education and our teachers have the resources to do the job they need to do. It's why education and public education is so important. We just can't lose that.
No, we can't. And something that's come out of the pandemic is the inequities that are out there in our schools. And that is something that is an up and coming topic that we're going to have to address. And we're going to have some tough conversations as to why the inequities are there. There's just so much we can talk about with that. That's a whole nother town hall. But we need to do what we can to get the funding that schools need. Yes. And the CARES Act was great. It gave schools some funding to get some very important things. But, in Central Dauphin School District, we got a balanced budget this year. But next year we may not be that easy, or it may not be as easy without raising taxes more significantly. Right. And folks have to understand, if we don't have a little tax increase each year, it makes it a huge gap later on. So do you want a little bit of an increase or a huge gap or a huge increase later on down the road? And you need to go to school board meetings so that you understand these things and understand why there's tax increases. It's not that we spend money crazily. Right. It's the cost of things just keeps going up.
It does. And I would highly encourage people to understand how public education is funded. When your legislator, whether that's a state rep or a senator, puts on their Facebook page or sends out a mailer that says, I just got you millions of dollars for education. Aren't I wonderful? Here's a little secret, right? If there was a stuffed animal in their seat, you would still get that same amount of money for education. They are not doing that for you. What you need to say is, why isn't my school fully funded? We have schools, hundreds of schools across Pennsylvania that are underfunded every year by the state of Pennsylvania. Simply because, and I'm not going to get too technical, but there's a fair funding formula in place, and that formula boils all the schools down to the same thing. So they're considering apples to apples. And they're supposed to run all the education money from the state through that formula so everybody is fully funded. That's not what happens. Not all the money is being run through that formula. Just a tiny sliver is. And it's causing these inequities in school funding to where your education depends on the zip code you live in. Okay, we need to be holding our legislators accountable for that and saying, when they say, oh, I got you millions of dollars, you don't say, oh, aren't you wonderful? You say, where's the rest of it? Because when your school is underfunded by the state, they have to increase taxes to make up that difference. And that's why your school taxes are high. That's why they keep growing, because the state is not giving what they're supposed to. It's not that they don't have that money. Some schools are getting way more than they need.
Mhm.
So, it's not like if they get more, then all of a sudden we can't manage. That's not true. Everybody can be fully funded and should be fully funded. And that's an area that I really wish parents and residents, even if you don't have a child,
Mhm.
that matters because it affects directly your school taxes on your property. So I wish everybody would get involved in that as well. And when it comes time for that in the budget, start calling your legislator and saying, let's talk.
Yes, and every year those are emails that I send saying we need to fully fund public schools.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there's so many other factors that come into that too. The charter schools that are for profit
Yeah.
are taking funding away from our public schools. And it's more than what we pay per student if they were in the district.
Right.
So we need our students to stay within our public schools. And I'm sure some of the charter schools are great, but some of the research I've read shows that they're not meeting the test scores like the public schools are. And you're paying more for them.
That's right. And even let's say they were fantastic, the fact is they're for profit. So why are they getting our public education money when they are existing for profit and making a profit? Harrisburg is just so overrun with lobbyists and, special interests, and they have a way of getting their way in Harrisburg. And what that does is it leaves behind the rest of us. And, I think unions get a bad rap, but unions are really fighting for us. And PSEA is fighting for your kids. All of your kids. And so it's really important for people to understand how the education funding works and why it's such a mess. It's by design and it's on purpose, and they could change it if they wanted to.
And hopefully we get some legislators voted into office who can make some of those changes. That's how we can support education, by voting for pro-education candidates come fall.
Yeah.
Like you.
Well, but yes, absolutely. I agree. It is definitely something that we could change in the blink of an eye if our legislators had the guts to do it. I'll just be perfectly honest. That's what it boils down to. So
that's a state and national problem that we need to address.
Absolutely. And that is also a whole nother town hall.
It is.
It shows you how connected everything is. You can't just be a single issue voter, because everything is connected to everything else. It's unreal when you really start to look at it like that. So
the best thing that people can do is to be informed in all aspects of their life. Everything that impacts them, you need to do your research and get your facts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, back to school is starting.
Yeah, Monday morning.
Yep, we will be there. And so, for all of you, if you're not in the Central Dauphin School District, I highly recommend, getting on your school district's website. I'm sure you've done it already. I'm sure parents are not just all of a sudden like, oh no, what's going on? I know you know, but just a reminder, there's options out there. If you're a single parent, ask around, talk to your neighbors. The Nextdoor app is really good. If you're not on that, that's a great place to talk to people who live right in your neighborhood, and try to figure some of this stuff out too. So does anybody have any questions that are with us on Zoom? If you do, I gotta go to the bifocals to see. Unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment, or put it in the chat. Let's see. I thought.
So I do have a question. What is the district doing with students with IEPs?
So students who have IEPs are actually getting instruction every day of the week from their special ed or their resource teacher. So they're coming if they're choosing hybrid, they're coming face-to-face the 2 days and we'll have instruction, but on the virtual days, they'll also be receiving instruction. And that's at the elementary level. I apologize, can't speak to the upper levels, but I would assume that they're getting the same supports, you know, the 5 days a week from their case manager.
Are they allowing volunteers in? I know, like my mom, when I was little, she would come in and pitch in. Are they allowing any of that to kind of ease the pressure? No.
I don't believe so at this time. Only as essential are allowed in the buildings, and that's hard because you know, at the elementary level we have, you know, community members who come in and read with students on a daily basis and give them some of that extra reading support or just some one-on-one time to boost their morale or confidence. So community is so big at the elementary level, and we're unfortunately not able to utilize that.
Yeah. And sports are an issue. There was a protest recently about sports. So yeah, and all schools are doing it differently, I'm sure. So, you know, check in where you are and get involved. I just can't say that enough. Get involved. Whether you have kids or not, you have a right to get involved.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, you have to be involved.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate, like I said, what you do for a living, for our kids, and I appreciate you joining me today, sharing all the knowledge and the suggestions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. I had a great time.
Awesome. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will be back next week with some new town halls. So keep an eye out on the Facebook page for those. All right. Thanks again.